Hi, everybody, and welcome to this workshop. My name is Marco, and I'm an Android designer. Or even better, my name is Marco, and I'm proud to be an Android designer. We have a good crowd. I mean, let's face it, Android design is just becoming amazing. When I look at the applications that we have in our market, they're just becoming stunning day by day. I'm so happy about where we're going. I really feel that the introduction of the Android Style Guide was a massive step forward the right directions. Google cares about design as well. I mean, today you could have had all sessions just about design if you wanted to. Raise your hands. How many people have been to Design Talk during this Google I/O? That's what I'm talking about. Design and Android are just a fantastic synergy together. And with the right development, we can build the most amazing platform ever. I'm not alone during running this workshop. I have a lot of design team here with me to help out. And let them introduce for themselves.
Hi, I'm Rich Fulcher. You may remember me from 45 minutes ago. I'm an interaction designer on the Android design team.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Lyon. I'm also an interaction designer on the Android design team.
Hi, I'm Rachel Garb, also an interaction designer on the Android team.
I'm Jens Nagel, interaction designer, Android design team.
Hello, I'm Peter Ing. I'm a visual designer on the Android design team.
Cool.
My name's Günter Bayer. I'm designer at Gigbeat.
Mike Novak, the developer of Gigbeat.
My name is Eric Burke. I'm with Square, and I am not a designer.
So why are we here today? Why are we running this workshop? As many of you, I just like reading blogs and finding out things about Android and all the discussions that people are having about the patterns and the Android Style Guide and everything. And there's a particular topic that I was really caught by and really dragged my attention into, which is today we see a lot of new applications coming up. We have tons of applications coming up every day. We have very popular applications that are coming to Android. And people discuss about whether they're using the right patterns, whether they should use the right pattern, if they are not using the right pattern, and things like that. There's a particular question that comes up once in a while, and it really made me think about it, which is, if every application is using the style guide, does it mean we're going to have all applications look the same? Well, the answer is obviously not. Quite the opposite, actually. I really believe that Android is the ecosystem out there that offers the maximum flexibility to really make your brand to shine and be different from all the other applications in the market. So there's something very important that we need to understand. Being consistent and adapting the right pattern to your application, it doesn't mean that your application has to be looking the same like others. You have many, many ways to make your application to look special. I mean, who would like to have an ecosystem just to be very boring and looking the same? Think about human beings, right? We're all different. If you look around, there's no one that looks like you. We also dress up differently to distinguish from one another. When we're outside Google I/O. And I think this is the way that I'd like our ecosystems to be very different to have very different applications. At the same time, human beings have very consistent pattern. Even if you don't speak the language of someone else, I'm sure people here come from all over the world. I come from Italy. And we may not know the same language, but if I smile, or if I get angry, or if I raise up my voice, people do understand what I mean. And somewhat, we want our application to have that standard, consistent way of behaving to be consistent across Android. So how do we do it? Well, the style guide is a great example of how you need to make certain things very consistent, because when they're not consistent, We just break the user mental model. Learning an ecosystem, learning an operating system is difficult. You start playing with it, you start swiping around, you start learning some gestures, and when not all the applications use them consistently, then you just don't know how to operate anymore. So you want to know where my settings are. You want to know that if I see different views next to each other, I can swipe through it. You want to know where the action bar is with all the main actions. But at the same time, you want to make it special. And there are ways to do it. You can play with graphics. You can play with gradients. It's not true that all application on Android has to be flat. Like, we like this style, so we adopt it that way in the core applications. But by any means, if your brand is soft and wants to have gradients and little treatment in the action bars and across the UI, that's welcome. We want an ecosystem to be very different. The way your little elements animate from one another, if I tap on a list view, how does it zoom into a full view? This is all up to you. And I think the more, the merrier. The more diversity we can find in our ecosystem, the more people are going to find little special things to make their application even more interesting. And I love to see it when it happens. So this is why we're here. We want to deliver this simple message. Designing for Android allows you to have applications that feels unique, that feels beautiful, and at the same time, they're very consistent and easy to use. So to do that, this time we organized a workshop. In fact, this is not really a talk. I don't even have slides. But we have people coming up on stage later. We have 5 developers that are going to be showing their applications and going to be talking to us about the challenges that they face. And we're going to have an open discussions around what we suggest, what they could do. No dogma, though. Just thinking about possibilities and really have an interesting and nice, friendly talk about the challenges that the patterns offer. Before we get to that, though, I'm really, really excited to have 2 guest speakers here on stage with us. They introduced themselves before. They are representative of 2 of my favorite applications. We have Square, and we have Gigbeat. So we're going to hear their story. Most recently, they have upgraded their applications following the most recently Android style guide pattern. So we're going to hear what they did and why they did it. And I think the result is excellent. There really are applications that feel so different from one another, although they're very consistent in the way you use them. And I love that. So without further ado, let me introduce our first guest speakers, Eric Burke.
Okay, so like I said, I am not a designer. I am a software engineer. I've been with Square for about 2.5 years now. And what a lot of you might not know is when I joined Square, there were only 2 of us creating the Android application. It was Bob Lee and myself. And we made the first version of the Square app on Android. And we're very proud of the fact that on the day that our first iPhone app was released publicly, we also released our Android app. Same day. That was 2 years ago. So I think more companies should do the same. We just released an upgrade to Pay with Square a couple of weeks ago. Again, same day, both platforms. Earlier this week, we released an upgrade to our Square card reader product. We just reskinned it to use the ice cream sandwich and hollow look. So we're very proud of the work we're doing here. So without further ado, let's take a little history lesson and look at where Pay with Square originated. This was our card case application. This is what our app used to look like on Android. This was well before Android design guidelines were out. This is what we call a skeuomorphic design. So skeuomorphic means you're trying to make an application look like a real-world object. Now, in this case, obviously, it looks like this gorgeous leather wallet, and it has cards in there, and it looks like something real. It's pretty. People really loved the look. But from a design perspective, it has a lot of interaction problems. So first of all, let's look at technically on Android. This is really hard to pull off. I worked a lot of hours trying to get this thing to look right on Android, and I think technically it just slowed us down. Also, as more and more screen sizes come out, stretching a bitmap like this ends up producing fuzzy graphics, and that's not cool. From a usability perspective, you can only hold really 4 cards. The top card, that's your merchant card, that actually has a hologram in the corner And I think Apple copied us. When they move their phone, they have a little hologram on their little shiny silver thing. We did that in our app also. But for the merchants, you can only hold 4 cards. So that's a problem scalability-wise. Also, to actually make a payment with this product, you had to first drag a card out of the pocket and then press a button. So it's multiple taps just to perform the most basic operation. To see nearby merchants, you had to tap the Explore Places button. Again, it's multiple taps to get to anywhere in the app. So the problems are, well, the good thing is it's pretty. The problems are it requires multiple taps to do anything. It's technically very challenging. It slows us down. And as phones get bigger, it looks more fuzzy. So we threw it all away. We completely redid it. And this is what Pay with Square looks like today. These are actually some of the secondary screens. So on the left, you see the Twitter view. And as you can see, it has an action bar, has a view pager. You can do the whole horizontal swipe gesture. On the right, I'll get more into the detail on that in a minute. It's definitely an Android app now. No one is going to look at this and say that's a skeuomorphic design or that's an iPhone app. It looks totally like Android. What I'm not showing here is when we first started prototyping this, we went with a dark theme. So it was a lot of black on black. And it looked kind of dreary. It made the app feel like you're in a nightclub. So we ended up going with a light theme. And I think it's totally appropriate for a dark theme in like a music player app, which you're going to see in a minute. But for a payments application, the light theme worked better. We're also using dark action bars. In the original iteration of this, the action bar color would change depending on what merchant you're looking at. Each merchant had a theme and a graphic, so it became more of a showcase for the merchants. But I think we kind of came to the conclusion that it looked a little gaudy to be changing the color constantly. And again, that was really nasty to implement because you can't change the theme of an activity after you've launched it without some heroic hacks. So we went back to a more streamlined basic approach with the light theme and the dark action bar. So I really like where it landed. And let's walk through the product and see what it actually does. So obviously we all want bacon, right? Round of applause for bacon. So this is all about making payments. So when you pull out the app and launch it, this is your home screen. This is the directory view. At the top, you see what we call the curated merchants view. These are some of our featured merchants. It's a gallery that slides from left to right. It's full bleed image. It has the little overlay in the middle, but it just is a gorgeous representation of the best merchants in the system. Below that, we have a list view that shows nearby merchants, and you can fit a lot more information into this design. You can fit in information about specials. You can fit in functionality to open a tab. You can fit in the distance. So contrast this with the original card case design where it was this gorgeous piece of leather with cards, but none of that was ever actionable. You had to go through multiple taps to actually do anything. So a key part of this design is to reduce friction and make the payment experience effortless. So by reducing the number of taps, fitting more information into the main screen, the whole user interface becomes a lot more usable. So when you want your bacon, you tap the button to open a tab, and then you walk up to the bacon truck, you place your order, and then you say, put it on Eric. And they will see my photo on their register along with my name, and they can tap a button to charge me, and then I can put my phone away and I'm done, and I have my delicious bacon, and I've made a payment. So we talk internally at Square, we talk a lot about the notion of humanizing payments. We'd rather the payment experience be about an exchange between two people rather than an exchange between you and the technology. So we really want to reduce the number of taps and make the app as effortless as possible. So we can take this one step farther. We can actually enable a feature called Auto Tab. So this app is deceptively, it looks like a really simple app. There are only a few screens in the app, but it's actually technically really difficult to code something like this. So with Auto Tabs, you can put your phone away, and then as you're walking around, when you get within a certain radius of your favorite merchant, it'll automatically open a tab. So if I like coffee, I can set up an auto tab for Sightglass Coffee, which is just a few blocks away from here. I highly recommend it. Also, San Francisco Baking Company is another great merchant that's a few blocks away. So I think these small businesses would be thrilled if 700 or 800 people installed the app, and just did a cash mob and walked in and ordered these amazing cookies or this amazing coffee. So that's my product plug. But with auto tabs, it's the ultimate. You never have to touch your phone. So the technology just disappears. So we put a lot of emphasis on pixel pushing and making everything the right colors and getting the alignment perfect. But in reality, our goal is to make the interface vanish completely. And that's the goal of Pay with Square, is just make it go away. So we did bring cards back in the latest iteration of the app. So first screenshot, I showed you a skeuomorphic design. We got rid of the cards, and what we found was that the user interface was a little bit boring. It was just a bunch of images with list views. So we brought back in the latest iteration the notion of cards. And I really love the way these look. They're not shaped like a credit card. They're actually shaped like a square with rounded corners. We do that a lot in our website and our applications because our company is called Square, and that's what our logo looks like. And I made a little square robot here for my shirt. So cards are great because it's something tangible that humans can relate to. It's something you can touch. You can share cards. You'll see the same card on the website, in your Android phone, on the iPhone. You can email cards. This is a showcase for the merchants. So the merchants' photos show up on here. The merchants can put menus on here. Eventually, we're going to have more information, directions to the merchant. You can have punch cards, specials, discounts, first visit rewards. All that stuff shows up on the card. So a card is a concrete, tangible thing in your UI that users can explore and play around with, and it's a delightful way to do the user interface. But even with the cards, it's not designed to be skeuomorphic. It's not designed to stray too far from an Android-inspired feel. So I really like what we did here. For images, getting a little geeky here, the server provides the images to us. Since there's so many different screen sizes, we actually have a library. It's internal. I can't really share it with you right now, but we actually ask our server, give me the image at this exact pixel width and height. And then we also ask the server to do layering and compositing so the server can add the little square and the borders and rounded corners and all that. And then that way it returns the exact right image for the Android device. In the list view there, you see again, we're using squares with rounded corners. I know the Android look is more towards full bleed images, and we did try that in some early iterations. We just never could get it to look quite right for our taste, so we went with the rounded corners. I think that's okay. I don't think no one's really screamed at us for not doing full bleed images in lists. I think you have some latitude there. Launcher shortcuts. We do this in our Android client. We don't do this, obviously, in our iPhone client because you can't. This is really cool, though. You can just tap the icon in the upper right interaction bar, and you can add a shortcut to your favorite merchant. It puts it on your desktop. So there I have a Bacon link. So now whenever I'm near the truck, I can just tap that icon and open a tab at the Bacon truck. We take advantage of Android notifications pretty heavily. So whenever you have a tab open, a notification is open. So you can take a phone call while you're waiting in line or browse the web, whatever. You can always come back to your tab. And something I'm not showing here is once your tab is closed, you can leave a tip. So you can order your coffee, drink it, walk away, and then 10 minutes later you can pull out your phone and say, oh, that was really great coffee, I want to leave a tip. And you can do it right there from your phone. Merchants love to get tips. So when I saw the keynote the first day, the very first thing I saw when I saw the notification enhancements is we should put tipping in there. So I'm really excited about Jelly Bean and being able to take advantage of that even further than what we do now. So for sharing, you can share cards. We use Android's normal sharing mechanism. We don't try to embed a Twitter login into our app and a Facebook login and all that, those stupid things that other apps do. This actually, yeah. This actually ends up being more powerful because you can share with things you never even imagined. Because I have the barcode scanner app installed on my phone, I was actually given a demo of the app to my boss, Jack Dorsey, and he looked at it when I shared something. He said, what is that? Why does it say barcode? I was like, I have no idea. I've never seen that. Let's try it out. So I tap the button, and it generates this barcode. And then he pulls out his phone, and he scans it, and sure enough, I just shared a card with a barcode, and we never wrote a single line of code to do that. So that was pretty amazing. And then just to wrap it up, if you go to your account settings, this looks more like a stock hollow look and feel. This is a visual cue that you're kind of in the underbelly of the app, messing with your account settings. So our philosophy at Square is we want our app to look exactly the same on every single Android phone. So we backported as much as possible. We actually hired Jake Wharton, who wrote Action Bar Sherlock, and it's a great library. Yes, thank you, Jake. And we're actually committed to keeping that open source and continuing to innovate on that, and we've got some more open source libraries coming up soon. We use a compatibility library, fragments, loaders, all that stuff, so no matter what Android phone you're on, it's going to look exactly the same and provide a consistent user experience. So that is Pay with Square. Thank you.
Let's have a little chat here about what we saw, what we like, probably everything. I think the application we just saw is just so awesome. And the message that I take out of it is rounded squares are fine. There's nothing bad about them. It's really about your applications. It's how you feel about it. And you saw this application is pretty special. It has cards. It has a lot of different metaphors that you haven't seen much before Jelly Bean on Android, but still feels very, very consistent with our ecosystem. There's one thing that I particularly love about it, which is the use of the big pictures. This is something that I can never enforce enough. Pictures can never be too big. It's a sort of mantra of mine. And if you have them, just use them. And thinking about an application that is so human that you don't even have to look at it when you pay. Just providing this simple thing, this simple, attractive, big picture of the bar, it's just something that really, really makes your application shine. Is there any question for Eric from the audience? We have microphones there, so when you feel like you want to participate and say something, feel free to line up, and we'll try to get questions. We want this to be more of open discussions. We're not going to have Q&A at the end.
My presentation was perfect. So,
all right.
I think it'd be great to have some questions. So while you're walking up here, I'll share an anecdote. When we first went away from the wallet metaphor and went to the new design, we actually had a whole bunch of complaints on Google Play. People were furious at us for taking away the wallet. They thought we made it look uglier and more boring. So anyway, I think those people are all wrong. I think it does go to show that you can't always listen to everybody who complains. No matter what you do, when you change your design, someone's going to complain. So anyway, yeah, question.
Nice design. Did you take in account, by doing the cards, any form of sharing of payments or into account?
Sharing. So right now when you share, you just
friend.
share a link to the merchant. So we're not doing sharing like peer-to-peer payments or anything like that. Right now it's strictly sharing the card. Like I went to Sightglass, I love their coffee, so I'm gonna tweet about it. So there's an icon to share it. Yeah, in the lower right, I can tap that and it brings up the Share Action Provider menu. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and particularly this screen, I think, is very interesting how the Square guys, they have embedded all actions in this card. Like it just feels so natural to have actions embedded directly in the view rather than in the action bar right here. Having an action bar obviously doesn't mean that all the actions have to be there. It really depends on the view.
We struggled a lot with that, actually. Early iterations put more in the action bar, but then it would go into overflow, and we just found that people didn't discover things if they're not right there visible on the screen. So that's been something we've iterated on a lot. Yeah. Question?
Hey, how's it going? So I'm curious if you ended up factoring in some customer usability studies or any work like that into your UI design as you were evolving it.
No. I wish we would do more of that. One thing we do have a customer insights group, and their whole job is to meet with merchants, and they do a lot of observations of the payment experience, and they talk to people. but we're not really doing formal usability studies yet, and I'm hoping I can kind of help make that happen. I think it's something we should do more of, but right now, no.
All right, cool, thanks.
Yep. We'll take 2 more questions and then we'll go ahead.
Maybe a little bit technical question. I want to ask, when do you fetch the images? Do you do any kind of prefetching on the background, maybe?
So the question is, when do we fetch images? So that's a tough engineering problem that we're putting a lot of emphasis on for the next release probably, is to do a lot more caching. We don't do a tremendous amount of prefetching, but we do cache images on the file system, so hopefully when you come back you see the same images. And we're investing a lot of resources to make that even better in future versions. That's actually been a very tough problem to solve though.
V1 looked very similar on the iPhone and Android, and then you switched to having different looks and feels on both platforms. Was that a tough brand decision to make?
Yeah, the philosophy at Square in the early days was that both apps had to look identical. And I was never thrilled with that, but we really have 2 primary mobile applications. We have the payer application and the seller application. So in the seller application, I am accepting a payment from you, but at some point, I hand my phone over to you and then you sign your signature on the screen. So in the seller app, it's actually more important to have consistency across platforms, because if I'm buying something and I walk up to you and I'm signing my name and giving you my credit card, I want that application to be trustworthy. So I need it to look consistent. From the payer experience though, this is my phone and I never give it to anybody else, and I'm in Android all day long. So in the payer experience, we have flexibility to be more creative on the different platforms, and we can diverge a little bit. It was funny, one of the engineers made the comment when we were first going through this, he's like, you know, what's actually happening is our iPhone client is becoming more like an Android application, because they went with a lot of the full bleed images also, and it kind of made the iPhone client look more like Android. But yeah, because of the audience, we feel like we can make each app look a little bit more different on the different platforms. Yep.
Okay, and on these great questions, let's give a round of applause.
Thank you.
All right, let me introduce you the next guest speakers. They are the creator of Gigbeat, Michael Novak, and Gunter Bayer.
Hello.
The slides.
All right.
We rock Google Docs. Right, so as Marco said, we're Gigbeat, which is a concert application for Android. Helps you find when your favorite artists are going to be in your city. Do I actually need to be? No, it's all you. Yes. So it's lets you find out. So you know, it's great to go to shows, but I found myself missing shows all the time. You know, just not finding out about it until somebody says, "You missed an amazing show last night. I don't know why you weren't there." It's like, thanks for inviting me. So I decided to solve that problem by creating the application that would let me follow my artists and know when they're going to actually be in my city well before even tickets usually sometimes go on sale. And it lets us really get excited about shows. So yeah, that's Gigbeat.
We want to show a couple of patterns that we introduced to Gigbeat because it has about 6 months of evolution behind it. And I think the first one might be branding. Branding is always tough because on one side you have to create something that stands out. On the other hand, you have to create something that is that feels just right in the ecosystem. So these 2 things are fighting against each other a little bit. We tried a lot of things, from Captain America to audio-like icons, every kind of shape. But finally, we just settled on the initial GB because we really liked the name and we felt that this just is enough. At the top one, we can see the first icon that we ever created that had some kind of a final touch to it. And then you see how the icon evolved over time. And right now, it's pretty much 100% like an ice cream sandwich jelly bean icon. So it's a similar thing with color. Android is about simplicity or beauty and simplicity, more or less. And you don't want to have a lot of colors fighting for attention, fighting against each other. So we just went with basic black tones, gray tones, and obviously a couple of white tones for the fonts. And we are highlighting really special parts about the application with this pink, which is obviously our branding color. For example, in that list, you can see a couple of gigs that are more or less interesting for you from the bands that you love. And there's that one particular pink line. That is a gig that is showing up really close to where you are right now, so probably of more of an interest than all the other gigs to you. So I wanted to talk a little bit about typography, but I think Mike has the better shirt for that part.
Yeah, I kind of like typography. So yeah, with Gigbeat, in our early versions, we were really all over the place. We had lots of different kind of designs, different elements, different buttons, and it was kind of wacky, I think. And we started with the Eurofins font up front. We use this really mostly in headers, so you can see the top artist is the only artist that actually has that font. And we didn't want to overuse it, but we also wanted to kind of get a little bit of depth into the application, so we thought that might work. But then we realized we were having some spacing issues. We realized that letters were sometimes showing up on top of each other. Rendering wasn't working really that great for us. So we decided to try another font, and also the same thing, really kind of just a really annoying problem of rendering. It really kind of messed with our user experience, we thought, because it's important to see that information. And if that information is obscured in any way, it's no longer relevant for you. So we decided to use, before Roboto was available, we decided to use the Droid sans as much as possible and really just play around with the different weights that were available to give some depth. And then when Roboto came out, we were so excited about it. I'm actually wearing a Roboto shirt. We were really excited about it, and we decided to just switch to using it as much as possible. You can see we use some different weights. The header font, the headline font for the list item is actually a little bit larger than some of the other ones. You'll see on some other slides, we've got some other really creative ways we use it. A dashboard. A dashboard's a really interesting pattern. You've seen it used throughout Android for a little while now. And we're trying to figure out how to use it and be unique. Like, we wanted to really emphasize our brand as much as possible. And the pink is really the center of it, which is odd. I'm colorblind, so that actually does look pink to me, though. And the icons are really unique. We made sure that we spent lots of time going over each individual icon to make sure they really represented each section in the best way possible. We don't want to drive you to an artist list when you care more about locations, or when you care about artists seeing what's all around you, right when you open up the application. So we felt with the amount of content that we had for the application, the dashboard would work really, really well. And it also is unique. We actually, for Mobile World Congress, had pins made up of all our dashboard icons, which was really neat because you can actually associate the brand with a part of the app that, for the most part, you'd see is just pretty basic. But then going to the tablet, we realized, well, you can't just put 4 big buttons on a 10-inch screen. That doesn't really work. So we decided to add as much fresh content as we possibly could, and that's where we decided to use the larger images to really kind of bring some color to it, but also bring some relevant information.
Do we want to add that the tablet version isn't working perfectly yet?
It's kind of working. It's awesome.
It's okay.
It looks pretty. So yeah, I mean, we didn't actually get to the dashboard in the initial version. The version you see on the left is a really old version of the application that has like 3 tabs with a little pointer at the bottom. Like, we were kind of all over the place. There's some textures in there, and you have to do a lot of clicking too. Like, there's some buttons there that just don't really feel like they're part of the UI. Especially like what happens when that list scrolls up. All those buttons go away. So we really wanted to simplify it. So that's how we ended up coming to our current dashboard. We're like, let's really focus on what are the most important pieces of our application and give users the option to dive into each one of those, as they wish. View Pager, it's awesome. So View Pager works really well for us on the phone. When you click on the artist icon from the dashboard, you get presented with the list view. You get to see all your artists up front, which is every artist that you follow inside the application. You swipe to the right, you can see Last.fm recommendations if you're a Last.fm user. And when you swipe to the left, you actually see what's near you. So it basically just cuts out all of the artists that are not going to be in your city. And you basically could see your entire artist collection just by swiping up and down, left and right throughout the entire list. It feels really great. We went to the tablet. It didn't exactly work the same way, because then you didn't want just really big lists all over the place. So we decided to use bigger images again and do a grid view with what you can't really see behind the phone is a filtered list. So you can actually filter through, we actually list out the services, so you can just see what you have from Rdio, what you have from Last.fm. It gives you some options there. Location. Location was really fun. That took us a while too. This is also something we just didn't get right, which, it's actually okay to not get things right the first time. You really learn a lot from the whole process. So, it was definitely a learning process for us. We have some buttons, like you can click a button to get information that's near you, which is, for us, felt really awkward because we can actually get access to the GPS and just start loading data for you. So, why should we have to wait for you to click the button? And then also the same thing for search. It was just kind of tucked right next to it, and you had to search for a city. And this list view would actually be empty if you didn't have any content already searched for in the application, which isn't also very useful. So we tried to do some improvements here. We added a search bar for some reason on the screen at the top of the list. And then we just decided it would be really awesome if you could favorite some of these locations, especially since, if you're not somebody that travels very often, you're going to go back to the same location over and over again. So we figured it would be great to have those right on the first screen of the location section to really get some easy access. But it's really empty if you don't have any favorites. You still have to do something to get content. So what we decided to do after lots of debate was how do we get nearby information and favorite information together on the screen so that they could provide as much useful information without much interaction. So we decided, let's pin the favorites up to the top of the screen, and you'll always have easy access to those. Those are definitely very important to you. But if you've never used the app before, or maybe you haven't favorited anything yet, you can still get nearby information as well. Or you could be traveling. Like we're in San Francisco, so most of my favorites are New York. But if I open up the location screen, I can start to see venues from San Francisco because it's nearby me. And we were able to do that all with a segmented list. We were able to create different sections, and we thought that was like the awesome solution out of all the other ones we were throwing around.
Speaking of empty screens, you will have to deal with empty screens eventually. There are a lot of apps that are loading content from the web, and at times you just don't have a web connection. So how do you deal with empty screens? This was the first iteration of Gigbeat's empty screens, and to be honest, they are really, really boring and not really informative, and we had a lot of those. But eventually we decided that if you can't really inform, because that is obviously what you want to do in such an application, at least entertain to a certain extent. You want to have your users stay within the app and at least enjoy the empty screens, even though they aren't really that beautiful. And so we created a couple of really small illustrations and tried to improve the copy and just try to give a certain feeling across, a little bit of fun in between while information is loading or while they have to access some kind of login or anything like that. So we think these turned out pretty nicely in the overall context of the application.
The other really awesome thing we added was we added some actions at the bottom. So when you're on the empty screen of Last.fm and you haven't either logged in or you don't have any recommendations, it'll actually say, hey, you can log into Last.fm and this screen will populate with some artists. So we really tried to take advantage of as much of the screen as possible to make it easy for the user to actually get benefit from that screen.
That's yours, right?
All right, notifications. So Gigbeat obviously does a lot of work for you when you don't use the application. But one of the interesting things that we were playing with, especially when we were doing bigger releases, was how do we let the user know there's new content? You might not actually update the application the first time you might not use the application the first time you update it. So it could be days or weeks before you actually venture into it. And in most cases, you'll venture into it because you have a need. You're trying to get to certain content. So we didn't want to just pop up a dialogue or pop up a screen that says, hey, what's new? By the way, thanks for using the app. We wanted to really be as unobtrusive as possible. So if you go to the next slide, So what we were doing was we'd actually pop up a notification for major releases. I want to emphasize major releases, because bug fix updates, like getting a notification every time you open the app, would be kind of annoying, I think. So we wanted to make sure that we were definitely doing this just for major, we've got new features that we definitely think you're going to love. So when you first open the application, instead of actually getting in your way and showing you that welcome screen first, we actually just leave the app the way it is and pop the notification up. So that way, once you're done looking for whatever it is you came into the app to look for, you can actually, at your leisure, check out what we've got that's new in our application.
We might add that you have to create about 4 sizes and 3 different styles for every notification icon that you're creating. So be prepared.
This is actually my favorite feature that we added in our latest release that's in the market today. I'll do playback notifications. So, concerts is music, but you aren't always at concerts. So you're listening to music on the go, commuting. So it's awesome to find out about the artist that you're actually listening to when you're listening to it. So what we do here is we pop up a silent notification during playback if that artist is actually going to be in your city. And we do it silently because the worst thing in the world would be to pop up a notification about some secondary data for the artist and cause a little beep in the middle of the song. Like, that would just frustrate me. So we wanted to make sure that we provided the information so that the user would be notified that the artist is coming to their city, but we didn't want to interrupt the actual process that they're doing, which is listening to the music. So yeah, we were definitely being polite, silent notifications, and you get the information without being bothered. Event details. So yeah, event details is interesting. You've got the venue, they got the date, the time, tickets. It's pretty basic information for the most part. And in our first couple of iterations, it was really boring. We just did a lot of text. There wasn't really much breakup in the UI. There wasn't much color. I mean, it was really a lot of the basic colors. So we decided, let's stick an avatar in there for the headliner, and let's throw some icons into the list to really kind of break up the flow of all the text. But it still didn't seem right. It felt like it was just a lot of empty. The space didn't work for me. I didn't like this version very much. But what you see is we actually, give the next slide. We actually see is bigger pictures. I love this screen. This is one of my favorites. I think I stared at this screen for 20 minutes when we actually got it running. It was amazing. And so we did a nice large photo for the headliner of the event, and then we added in the supporting artists as well. So you'll actually get 2 photos there if there's only 3 artists playing, and then if there's any more than 3 artists, we'll use that other space to allow you to click through to see the full list. But the event date is actually really awesome because this is where we were able to use various weights of Roboto to really drive the emphasis on the date, where we do the actual day in a large, thinner font, and then the rest of the date in a smaller, bolder font, which was a nice breakup from the other text that comes below the photos, where we were able to put the venue information, check-in capabilities, and getting tickets. And then on the tablet screen, we had some room to throw some more photos in, some more information, and we actually had the list right on the side, so you could just go through each of the different events and see the information right next to it.
If you're thinking about this application, I think this is about events, this is about live music, and live music is exciting, right? These screens were not really that exciting, they're pretty boring. But I think we figured it out pretty nicely with these screens, because these photos, they actually are exciting. You actually want to see these guys live, right? Okay, the next one, the artist details, and I think you will love this one as well. Because the old version of Gigbeat, it just had a list of, or it had the artist name and then a list of its gigs that were upcoming. And we wanted to add a little bit more to these screens, so I sketched up this pretty rough thing here. And I showed it to Mike, and he really liked it, but he hated it at the same time, I guess. Because, fun fact, Marco here is the creator of that beautiful People's app from Android 4.0. And we wanted to do something similar with a carousel slider, that you can swipe from left to right and from top to bottom. As it turned out, that code was just working for Android 4.0, and Gigbeat is supporting 2.1 and upwards, so that poor guy over there had to rewrite the whole code to make it work on all the systems.
It took a couple of weeks, but it was well worth it. It's one of my other favorite screens of the application. I mean, we were really able to, the list looks great. I mean, you get nice big photos. We're able to break up. Because the other part of the problem was we couldn't figure out how to get other artist information like a bio in with the tour dates. The previous screen showed we had the avatar, the artist name, and a star, and then a list of events. So it's like we didn't want you to have to click to get to a profile and then click to get back to the events. So we're really trying to figure out the best way to do that, and this was just perfect. When I saw the contacts application and then the sketches, it was the perfect solution. You're able to swipe back and forth. There's no pause in a screen, going backward or forward. It really worked perfectly, I think.
You want to add something for the icon set?
Yes. So we actually have an icon set available as well at androidicons.com that we actually, for every application that we've been working on, all the icons that we put into them, we're actually just putting into this set. Because it was one of the places, it's how we met actually, was Gither put out an icon set that I took advantage of for some open source applications. Because as a developer, I don't really design icons very well. I know which icons I like in certain places, but I can't design them. So it's a really great resource for developers. I recommend everybody check it out. That's us.
That's it. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I have a question for the crowd. Who does think that the Square application and the Gigbeat application look the same? No one.
Nobody.
As you see, you have so many ways to make your application unique. It's just beautiful. I'd like to ask a question to our guests here, just as a start. Then we can get to the audience and to our group here. Let me get them a microphone. How did you come up with that color?
Well, I'm colorblind, so I'm going to throw that one right to you.
Please ask again. I didn't catch that.
How did you come up with that color?
That color? I'm not quite sure, man. It just looks good, right? Does it? There's about choosing color. This is just some kind of gut feeling. There's not a lot about it, as I said. You don't want to have a lot of color, fighting for attention and fighting across. Well, for example, the Google logo has 4 colors, which is a little bit too much. But well, in the end, you really want to keep down the amount of colors and just select some for highlights. And we just thought that 1 for highlights would be enough. And I think a pinkish, reddish thing is a pretty good highlight. So
it took a little while for me to get used to it. When I first saw it, I was like, whoa, wow, that's different. And then once I started using it, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like it really, because it added just enough color to really stand out. And in certain places, like in the carousel slider, it's the thick header and it's the thin line underneath the pictures. It really adds a lot to it.
Okay, we have a long line of questions. Let's try to get to them.
2 very short ones. Why dashboard pattern instead of action bar lists?
So we actually developed this application, I think it was like Froyo or Gingerbread was available. So the action bar pattern was still really developing, which is why I think the initial version really emphasized on the dashboard. We decided not to change that because we felt that those 4 icons really stood to our brand and the message we're trying to send with our application. And we really were able to have fun with those icons. And we only had 4, so we felt like it worked for us in particular.
And can I add that there is a lot of hate going on about the dashboard right now because a lot of people think that the dashboard in general is bad. But a dashboard makes a lot of sense if you have a couple of distinct pieces of information that are where there is not one single one that is more important. So I think a dashboard makes a lot of sense, especially in that context.
Okay. Yeah, I just think like with the lists, it allows you to put feature content right up front as soon as you get into the application. But everybody has reasons. The other thing was using notifications when the application's updated. You find that spammy at all, or why not just like a banner when they open the application after an update or something?
So we didn't actually think of a banner, but in terms of spammy, our major updates don't come very often. We're not like every time we update and say, hey, we changed that text so that it's spelt correctly, or that crash that you noticed, yeah, we fixed that. It's like that stuff's in the market listing, so we decided, let's not use the notifications for that. But when we have a lot of big features, like a redesign, we added, some bio information, that's stuff that I think is pretty important. And, it comes once every couple months, really, I think.
Good, thanks.
Sure.
Do you use
GPS or course location?
So we actually use course. We don't really need find location because most of the information from the API side of things is metro areas. So we really, we don't need that much from the GPS.
So I installed the app to kind of follow along with you guys, and it looked pretty good. I was curious on if you guys plan on integrating Google Music with it in the future, though, because I saw
awesome.
Last.fm, Dropbox, and a couple other methods for it. But
Yeah, that's like the email that I've gotten the most ever, I think, was where's Google Music support? And as soon as there's an official way for us to get to the artists list, because right now it's the content provider on the device doesn't return your Google Music artists. Once that's actually available for us, we want to dive in and do it. We don't really want to try and hack it, because then if it breaks or if there's something else going on, we really don't want to break the user experience. I feel like that might be more frustrating. So we decided to stay away from it.
Awesome. Look forward to it.
Thanks.
In terms of user experience and design, how do you deal with older platforms? Do you think it's better to style everything to have the same user experience across older devices as well, or do you leverage whatever the platform is offering you? For instance, take the example of dialogues or edit text or checkboxes. Do you have the same style for all, or how do you deal with that?
For Gigbeat, we style the dialogues, but we use wherever the platform base is. So for Hollow, we use the Hollow dialogue as a base, and for Gingerbread and Lower, we use the regular theme as a dialogue base. And we do change the color, but we didn't port back a lot of the drawable assets like the progress bar or the progress indicator. We just use whatever is on the platform for that particular device.
Okay, thank you.
I actually wanted to mention something about that. One thing you're going to find is once you start customizing one thing, you kind of are all in. Just as an example, some of the Motorola phones that are using Motorola's skin, we found that we had tweaked the button color, but we didn't tweak the text color, so we ended up with white on white. So once you start messing with customizations in the theme, you pretty much have to customize everything. Otherwise, you're going to get some nasty surprises when you go to like some of the carrier skins.
So your color scheme is great. You guys use pink and shades of gray to really make your app look distinctive. But you also have a very picture-heavy app with the artist picks and everything like that, and they come in with their own colors. And since these are like musical artists, they're likely to be like loud, possibly obnoxious colors, which could conflict with the ones that you have, with your pink and grays. So have you guys put any thought into that sort of issue? And is there anything you can do to try to reduce that kind of that loud contrast?
Well, yeah, that is because we turned down about every color except for these really, really important highlights, because then these colors don't interfere with each other. If you're having a lot of pictures, then you might not need any color at all, right? So, but if there is still one or two really important marks within the UI, then you might highlight them with exactly that color that you're used throughout all the other screens, and that is pink in our case.
Yeah, it's definitely an accent color, so it's meant to emphasize certain parts of the UI, and it's used in it's really carefully used, I think, throughout the application for that reason.
Thank you.
Sure.
This is a question for both Gigbeat and Square. I noticed that your application supports a variety of Android versions and also a wide variety of screen resolutions. Would you like to share with us your experiences in supporting multiple versions of Android and also different hardware specs? Thank you.
Sure. I mean, it was certainly a challenge at the beginning because we were, trying to figure out what all these differences really were. But what it came down to is there's a lot of resources available to abstract away some of those different nuances, like being able to, when things get deprecated, like for example, like some of the notification stuff was deprecated in how you create it. The action bar, is certainly something that's, introduced in Honeycomb, is not available on Gingerbread. So, we really tried to abstract away as much of the resources as possible so that we could plug them in where they made sense. Different static classes to lazy load APIs that are available on newer devices versus older. Same thing with layout resources for different screen sizes. We took advantage of values files and the dimensions file to actually keep all of our dimensions there so that our layouts weren't repetitive. And that allowed us to scale pretty easily without a lot of work and testing and really having to worry about if we changed the right file or not and made the size correct.
Thank you. Sure. Hey guys, I was wondering if you had any plans to open source the contacts implementation that you had written?
Actually, yeah, that was a slide, and then I got really busy. So yeah,
I forgot that, sorry.
Yeah, we are actually planning to open up the modifications that we made to get that to run back to 2.1, hopefully in the next couple of weeks.
Awesome, thank you. Sure. Where can I look for that?
Probably...
I think you might want to follow one of our Google Plus streams because we have so many, but we are cross-sharing as much as possible, so it will show up
definitely
there
one of the ones
eventually.
that's on the screen now, or one of our personal ones. We'll be spamming that.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, last question.
I really love what you guys did with the tablet landing screen. You have the dashboard features and the content there. So my question is also for the Android design team. Does the dashboard still work on tablets, considering like you only have just icons?
I mean, as far as Gigbeat goes, I think it worked out quite nicely. It allowed us to use big pictures and take up the majority of the screen for content, but still have those dashboard items. Instead of a grid, just listed on the right-hand side. So I think if the method fits for the application and it works for the implementation that you have, you could get pretty creative with the ways to actually make it work.
Yeah, I think that's the right answer. I mean, in the tablet, you can kind of, instead of having this dedicated screen that serves that navigation function, you can just divide the real estate up and have a panel that kind of is the kind of emotional or logical peer to it, but presents it in a different way. It doesn't have to kind of be the 4-up pattern. You can actually do lots of different things in that space.
Yeah. I mean, one of the takeaways that we had with developing Gigbeat was, there's a lot of creativity. You can do a lot of interesting things, and we follow the patterns just about as much as possible. I think I'm probably annoying at sometimes when I'm like, oh, that's not exactly right. We should do it this way, or my implementation isn't exactly, pretty enough. So, there's a lot of going back and forth, but, as you can see, we really emphasize trying to find as much creativity without making the application foreign for the users of the device.
Yeah, maybe that's why we showed a couple of these sketches and early prototypes and how the application evolved over time, because there is not really one pattern for good user experience, but you have to try out a couple of those as much as possible. Do some sketching, do some real prototyping, do some wireframings, and eventually you'll find a good solution.
Thanks.
Okay, let's give a round of applause to Gigbeat. All right. This is where things become interesting now. We're going to have this workshop. And we never tried it before, so you have to bear with us a little bit. But this is what we're going to do. We have 5 developers that are going to come up on stage one at a time. They're going to have 1 minute to just run us through their application just to have a little bit of context. And for that, we brought the gong. Put out the gong. Thank you, gong. And yeah, let's try to keep the atmosphere informal. We really want to have interesting discussions with these applications, and hopefully we're going to get some nice questions as well. So let's start with the first one. The first one is going to be Droid of the day. I'm going to get here on stage Mike Wilson. Please give a round of applause. Let me get my slides on.
So good morning, good afternoon, I guess. My name is Mike Wolfson. My app is Droid of the Day. The concept is designed to be simple, and the app is designed to be simple. Basically, it is a app of the day app that every day you get a notification of an app that is handpicked either by me or with help from my community. you can choose to check it out, or you can exit out. So if you, this is the home screen. If you choose to check out an app, you will just launch the app, and we'll obviously go into this in more detail. I don't make any money on the app, which is probably a business model familiar to a lot of people in this room. It's just something I do for fun. I did want to mention one of the reasons that I do this is to highlight great developers and to filter good apps up that might not be visible in the market. So if you're in the room and you would like me to feature your app, just send me an email to droidoftheday@gmail.com. Put hashtag IO12 or something in there so I know where you came from. But I'm always looking for great apps to feature. And I think that's under a minute.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So which screen do you want to start from?
Let's just do the first screen. Yeah. So this is kind of the Highwire Act portion of the program. So we're just going to walk through some of the screens of the app. We're going to talk about things we like and things that we think maybe could be improved a little bit from the design standpoint. I've got the mic here, but we've got Mike in the back row for the other designers, and we're just going to kind of make this a little Wild West, loosey-goosey. So I wanted to start by just kind of talking about a few of the things I really like about this application. And first and foremost, maybe Marco, if you could advance one slide. This app has a real voice. The Droid of the Day comment that comes in when you go and look at a particular application is very editorial, very genuine, very human. And that's something that's actually pretty important in an app like this. It's not just kind of a piece of market speak. I know it's a little, you're hoping maybe you could get out of San Francisco without getting into this hippy-dippy emotional crap, but it's actually really handy to go to an app that's actually expressing an opinion that isn't just some of the market speak that you may have experienced in the last couple of days. So I really like that. I really like how the app is kind of very tightly focused. It's not today's app in 6 different categories. It doesn't ask a lot from the user. The user doesn't even need to remember to check it. They'll get a notification reminder when a new app is available. They don't feel obliged to come every day if they don't have to. There's a history view that they can dig back through. They can choose to consume it on a weekly basis instead if they prefer. And it's got ways for them to interact. They can rate the content. They can make suggestions, as we saw before. So I think all of those are kind of really great things in the app. So good job. Great.
Thanks.
Ooh.
But.
No. So let's go back one slide. Let's go back to the dashboard. I know we talked about the dashboard in Gigbeat's context as well. And I think this might be an opportunity where we can even kind of play that focus aspect a little bit more strongly for the app. I mean, I think you've got 2 operations here which are really important. The Today's app, which you kind of naturally want to drive users to very directly. And the history is really important too. But I think a lot of the other ones could kind of possibly be put into, if you were to adapt the action bar pattern, they can go into the overflow menu. And maybe you could just kind of bypass the need to even have this dashboard and just kind of drive right to the Droid of the Day. Rachel, I know in your talk this morning you were talking about kind of what's the hero screen of your app. This seems like a good example of that Droid app page should be the hero and it should be the first thing you get to. So on the next screen, we've got, this screen is the type of screen that I always find challenging because just the amount of content, and the content has value. It's not kind of noise content. You're really just trying to deliver all the things a user could want to know about this application into one piece of canvas. And I think you get a lot of things really right. I mean, the most important content is at the top of the screen, and generally the less important stuff goes down. And I really especially like how you're using the collapse expand for the market description. That's a block of text that you don't really have a good sense how long that's going to be. So kind of using that control there fixes it in place. The user can dig into it, but it doesn't kind of disrupt getting at the other important stuff that's kind of lower on the screen. One thing, if you can go to the next slide, Marco, that same control winds up getting used for the screenshots. Can you put your device on the bed again? you get to see just like a little bit of a peek of the screenshots. And you can actually interact with that peek. You can actually, if there are multiple, you could scroll or swipe through that region. And then you can expand it up to open up and walk through the screenshots that way. I think for the screenshots, it's probably best to just expand them all the time. You know they're going to take up some height, but it's a fixed amount of height, unlike the market example, where I think makes perfect sense to use that expand control. So I would consider maybe just moving away from that control and just showing them at full height the whole time. The other thing that's really kind of interesting to think about on the screen are all of the actions. And again, this is a challenge, right? You've got the ability to kind of rate, to download, to share it with others. I think you probably want to pick one of those actions to be kind of the primary action on the screen, and it's probably the download button. You give that, to your credit, you give that to a user in a couple of different ways. They can tap on the app icon at the top to install it, or they can hit the download button, which is above the fold, so it's visible on the device. But I think you could probably make it even a little bit stronger. I'm going to just do some wireframing here. So one thing you can think about would be, I always draw an action bar before I draw anything else. I'm just hardwired to do that at this point in my life. You might be able to take that download button and move it up more tightly with the app icon. Instead of having those two functions that do the same thing, if you just kind of make this whole top area target, if this is the name of the app, we've got the big icon there. Maybe we have the download button. Marco, this is actually very similar to a lot of stuff that you're doing in the Play Store. Mm-hmm. You could even have the price be part of that download button when you present it there. Just to make that top part of the screen, here's the app, here's how to get it. If you don't even need to read anything more about it, if the notification told you enough, hop in, get it, and you're on your way.
Is there any way to represent, for the icon, I have that as a clickable point.
Yeah.
Is there any visual representation of some way that I can inform the user that that is in fact clickable? It's just an image; they don't necessarily know.
Yeah, it's something we struggle with a little bit too. I mean, for something like when we do quick contacts, we kind of decorate it a little bit, in one of the corners, just to kind of hint that this is something that just isn't just a graphic element. The other thing you can do is you could just kind of the way that you kind of wrap that space. Maybe it's less about turning the image specifically into a target and more about this whole area is a target, the action associated with it.
Yeah, that's what comes to mind is I just make that whole clickable, that whole area clickable as a view.
Cool. A couple other things just on the screen really quick. Now that I've taken download and moved it away from share, we need to kind of think about what to do with that. A pattern you could consider would be to use the share pack, which is something that goes in the action bar, and it's kind of a two-target action. It's got the generic share icon, which brings up the list of all the different other apps that you can call out to do this share, and that's kind of the current behavior. And it also brings in just a shortcut to the most recently used. So if the user just always shares, via Twitter or Facebook or Google+, then you're in great shape. I think the only other thing I want to talk about on that screen is the at the very bottom of the screen. So maybe if you go to the next slide, Marco, previous. Yeah, down at the very tail of that screen, there are the rate buttons. And I think that's a really great feature, and I like kind of that you're trying to use color to kind of differentiate between the positive and the negative actions. Peter, do you have any thoughts kind of on the visual side of how he could treat those like and dislike buttons?
Oh yeah. Part of this app, what I really like is that you have like multiple themes, and it's always hard to be a visual designer, and what you have to do is, it's easy to include everything and have multiple themes, but what you really need to do is figure out your brand and then just kind of go with that one theme. So you have like colorful gradients, you have like brushed metal and like these luster, shiny icons, and I'm wondering if you could actually take what you did in the dashboard with those icons, those metal icons, and kind of explored that theme and made that the focus of everything, and that today's app would become a Chrome icon too, and then maybe your action bar could be chromed out too, and then you really stick, you create this illusion of life that it doesn't necessarily mean that everything like becomes a bookshelf or anything like you mimic the real world, but it actually means that you create these elements and you establish these relationships where they could actually live in the same world together, and then people aren't finding like a constant analogy I always have is that like I just saw Prometheus, the sci-fi movie, and then when I see aliens, I'm like totally freaked out. But then an hour later, like I'm like, oh, this is just a really like cruel, weird world that like these monsters live in, and I'm not freaked out anymore. So if you once you start establishing these relationships with icons and elements, and as a user when you enter it and you realize that these things can actually like have a relationship, it's a nice feeling to. You don't feel like you're shocked every single time you turn a page or enter a new state of the page.
So to just recapture that, what you suggest is I capture in those like dislike buttons some sort of iconography that matches the rest of the icons to create that common language through the app.
Great, thanks, Peter. If I could, I wanted to crash the party and mention one other thing. I like these guys. I really like the app, and I'm actually really excited to see all the changes, all these suggestions come in. If you could go to the next slide, Marco, the detail view. There's one thing here that I think is worth talking about. This is one of my personal pet crusades. I always talk about this, which is the sometimes less is actually more. And I have two different types of wars that I like to wage, and one is a war against text junk, the unnecessary typographic elements that are intended to clarify things, but where actually space and contrast and color actually make a better impact. And also label junk, where again, context can provide much of the same function. So one of the things I'd suggest you might think about is when you look at all those section headings, they're very effective as section headings because you've used the color contrast. So they don't all need to have that colon following them. Again, when you have things like the cost of the app or the size or the rating, you might not even need to have labels on many of those things because the data itself can carry that context. You represent the rating as stars maybe, and then again, it becomes very obvious what it is. So take a look throughout all your apps and think about which elements are really just gilding the lily. You'll find that taking them out allows you to really focus more on the content.
That's a really good idea. That'll allow me to recapture some of that space also that is so valuable. That's a really great feedback.
Sorry to crash, but that was
okay.
one of my pet things.
I'm going to let you finish.
And with that, I'm honored to... Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
All right. The second application we're going to see today is Papyrus. And I'm happy to welcome with us on stage Andrew Hughes.
My voice isn't that loud. So this is Papyrus. It is a natural handwriting note-taking application. I designed it initially for 10-inch tablets, and we're slowly trying to work the interface down to smaller devices. So this is running on a ThinkPad tablet. How many people know what active pen technology is? A few people, okay. So natural handwriting is basically this app allows you to write just like you would write on paper, but with all of the advantages of modern technology, like in tablets. So with an active pen, thank you, that comes with this device, it's different than a capacitive stylus that works on just any tablet. It's a lot more accurate, and it has a lot more data throughput. It can detect when it's near the device, pressure sensitive, it has a side buttons. Others have more side buttons. So, for example, if I open a note here, I can write, and it works really well. Let me, so if I have it bigger, you can see the pressure sensitivity there. So it allows for a much more natural handwriting. So basically the application has notebooks on the left and notes on the right, and that's about it.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Let's see. So when you wrote to us, you were asking us about the general navigation. It feels like having to have this navigation with the split screen is kind of challenging on smaller devices. And I thought it was a very interesting point. In fact, actually, I was excited when you applied for this workshop because I do use this application. And the beauty of this application is that it's all about gestures. You have 2 fingers, you move your canvas with 2 fingers, you pinch to zoom, you can draw with your pen, you can erase with your finger. It's just beautiful. And then I felt, maybe a way to get this kind of screen, the split screen, to work on different devices on smaller screens could be to maybe have it slide like a lot of applications do today. But at the same time, I wonder whether there are other options. Like maybe you don't need the split screen at all. Why don't we make the navigation to be purely gestural so that when I get my application, I see all my notebooks, and then I tap on them, and they open up in all the pages that I have, and perhaps I can pinch to get back to my notebooks, and everything just becomes super gestural. So that's something that I think we need to consider. Not every application must have a split screen or this standard navigation. I think we can really innovate in the way we get into different views. I guess the pattern that we already have, which is kind of similar to what I'm talking about, is gallery, where the navigation is purely hierarchical. You don't have any split screen. So I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I want to utilize gestures as much as possible. So with the pen right now, I know you were talking about the general layout of the app, but in the note-taking, you can use gestures to undo. So if I draw something and I flick left, undo, and then flick right is redo, flick up to get to the color palette. So things like that allow for quick navigation. You can also access those things just by clicking from the action bar. But definitely adding more gestures to be able to navigate around the rest of the app as well. Or switch, I was talking to Roman Nurek, and he suggested instead of having buttons to switch between pages like that, to use a bezel swipe to switch between pages in the note, which I think is a great idea.
That's great, because I swear I haven't talked to Roman, but that was part of my next suggestions. I think, I swear, maybe we just think the same way. There was another point you were bringing in your application, which is all these elements on the action bar. And obviously, when you get to smaller screens, they get stacked. So I should have a screenshot somewhere about that.
Yeah.
Right? And then you tend to cover the bottom action bar with your hand, and things don't get so usable. So maybe even here, just like Roman was suggesting, an option can be, do we really need all those actions in the action bar? Again, how we can bring gestures? How can we innovate with gestures? I think the reason why we selected the Papyrus application here is really because innovating with gestures is one of the things that Android, I believe, is doing the best. We have swiping gestures, we have edge gestures, we have a lot of things that we're introducing. And I think Papyrus can really help to push the agenda here. So one thing is what Roman was mentioning, so maybe add gestures to swipe from one page to another, just like Chrome introduced the Chrome browser. And then when I see the undo buttons, I'm thinking, I wish there was an universal way to do undo. We just haven't found it yet, but I'm sure that with your contribution, with your ideas, with more applications, finding out the right gesture for those patterns, we're going to crack it at some point, and at that point, we won't need buttons anymore for undo. I really see how Papyrus at some point will be just literally a piece of paper that you can navigate with. So I don't know if other people have some feelings around the action bar and these buttons. By the way, the crowd has been silent in the last few minutes. I don't know if you guys want to ask questions to Andrew, just feel free to stand up and come on.
So on the previous slide, we've had a lot of users complain about having the buttons on the bottom. I put them there because I didn't really know what else to do. They wouldn't fit in the top, so I put them on the bottom. But when you're writing, especially, it's kind of harder with a Galaxy Note because it's not that big of a device, but when you're writing, your hand hits those. And the other problem is the physical capacitive buttons that are already on the device. People who are left-handed hit the back button, people who are right-handed hit the menu button. And there's not really a good way to get around that.
Well, it's kind of what we discussed here, right? If you can avoid having exposed the two arrows to go from one page to another, that's going to reduce your elements. Of course, you probably still want to give that navigation in a more findable way. Maybe you can have it in the overflow menu. But I think there are ways for you to probably end up having just maybe half of these actions.
Yeah, we also have, you might be able to take a cue from what some of the media apps do, where kind of, once you're in a Hangout or once you're watching a video, we actually just miss the action bar. Now for you, it might just kind of be a different cue that you would use. Maybe it's when stylus is down, just take the bars away and maybe wait for that lift off.
Right.
Then they can come back on. Because you're never going to kind of need to interoperate, activate any of them while you're actually kind of in the sketching modality.
Right.
So maybe a trick like that might be valuable too.
And there's one more thing that I wanted to talk to you about, which is this other problem that you were facing, the color picker. And the problem is when you get to a small screen, this color picker doesn't seem to work anymore. Now, there are ways to do it. For instance, in the book application, what we do in smaller screen, we do put a tab, a swipeable tab, to go from one area to another. So you could see that happening here. But even there, I think you can push the agenda and really try something new. The color pickers, they were designed for mouses, for mice, and for a different kind of interaction. So I don't know what the right interaction is. After I saw that, I started thinking about it, and I'm not sure if I can draw on this directly. I can try. So there you go. It works beautifully. So, maybe you have this icon here, and when you tap it, instead of getting to a grid like this one, maybe you just have the main colors, like if you were flowers, and you have all the tones around them.
Okay.
And then maybe when you hold press on them, perhaps you could zoom in. You could zoom in a square, and then moving your finger left and right will change saturation and intensity. The point really is sometimes it's not really about putting the right action bar or putting the right tabs. It's really about rethinking the problem.
Right.
And when we do it, I think we really when we can crack the problem with different solutions, I think we really contribute to the system to evolve and to be better. So my recommendation would be, can we find a beautiful way to have a color picker, which is also gestural, it uses the capacitive touchscreen, and so forth.
Great.
One question, and I think we have to play the gong.
Because you were talking about the undo gesture earlier. On a lot of your computers, you're starting to switch to having purely gesture-based trackpads. And often, like, 2 fingers swiping to the left would be going back, or vice versa to the right. And so maybe you could do something like that. And maybe even, like, for changing pages, you could do, like, 3 fingers. So I don't know if that helps. But.
Yeah, currently in Papyrus, we use 2 fingers to scroll. And pinch to zoom, because you can use a single finger to erase. And that's because you can detect the difference between the pen and the finger. But definitely a gesture like that. Like I said, you can use the pen side button currently in our application to undo and redo by performing gestures that won't work on non-active pen devices. But yeah.
Yeah, it is a very interesting problem to to investigate, and I wish you the best. So
thank you.
A round of applause for Papyrus. Thank you, Andy. We didn't have to play the gong. So the next application coming on stage is Equalizer, and I'm happy to welcome on stage Michael Musa.
Hi, I'm Michael Musa, and this is Alex Roca. We are the founders of Smart Android Apps. And the Equalizer app is a global equalizer app that works with any third-party music player. So I'm just going to get into it and show you a typical use case. First of all, you would open up your favorite music player, whatever it may be. In my case, Google Play Music. And you'd play your song. And from there, you can then open up our app. We have a convenient shortcut and a notification bar. But Google Play Music also has this nice open intent, well, Android intent. It's in the API framework. We go sound effects. And from there, I can change with one of the standard presets or go to the Equalizer tab either by touching or swiping and then changing them by hand, just like that. And that's pretty much the gist of how to use the app. There are other more advanced features as well. So from there, I think we can go to the slides.
So yeah, guys, first of all, and we talked a little bit before the session today started. I was really happy that you guys applied for the session because I got to know your app and I really use it. And one feature that I find especially cool is they actually use ID3 tags in the MP3s to automatically switch between presets. Then that actually works quite well, especially if you're in the car and you don't want to fiddle around with your phone. So I really like it and I use it. One thing I wanted to talk about is, and that might affect other applications as well, at least as far as I see it in market, is actually the tutorial. So everybody can see that this is actually the extent of the first use tutorial. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 screens. What prompted you to have that tutorial at the beginning?
Yeah, I'll let Alex did it, so you can talk about it.
Way to blame me, huh? Well, to be honest, we were having a lot of issues with support. One of the things was a lot of our users actually thought that our application was a music app, a music player. And that's not really true. What our app is there for is to complement the music player. Again, you use any music player you want, whether it be the standard music player app, double twist, whatever the case may be. Then you open our app, and then that's when you start applying some of the presets, equalizer effects, virtualizer, bass booster, you name it. We were getting tons and tons of emails on, hey, guys, well, emails and 1 stars. So we actually said, we're going to come up with a guided tour. We're going to, it's going to be hopefully enough so that users can actually learn how to use our app properly, reduce the number of support emails we were getting, and hopefully, get those ratings up and going.
Yeah.
That was primarily the reason why we did it.
And I can see how that is sort of a difficult balance to strike. Right?
Yep.
So especially you have a little bit of a more techie app in that it's not a sort of traditional app. It's sort of a helper app for other music applications, right? So there's probably a little bit more explanation necessary there. But as I said, it's sort of a difficult balance to strike. If you get too lengthy, though, I think you run the real risk that you're really not achieving what you're setting out to do here. Because users are often not very patient people. Right? I would venture to say that, you know, after the second or the third screen, you would probably have the yada, 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 yada. And then, you know, on the final screen, you know, they just skip over content. More general and not necessarily geared towards your app, because I think you can possibly benefit from a tutorial, but I see many apps on market where I sometimes ask myself, do they really need a tutorial? You know, either the UI is already so self-explanatory that you know, maybe the tutorial is not needed, and that is what I would probably give it as advice in general is, you know, try to make it work without a tutorial. You know, try to test it with users. Do they really need a tutorial, or you know, does your UI cover it? You know, does the UI speak for itself, basically? The other good outcome of such a test is that, you know, if you do find out that they have problems, you find out which problems they are. And that is probably something that you could zero in on. You know, what are the cherry-pick the problems, right? What are really the problems that you need to address, or the information that you need to give to users in order to get over the initial hump, to, you know, understand what your app is about and how it interplays with other apps, right?
What are your thoughts on like toast hints? I've seen certain apps in certain areas put a toast hint maybe the first time or after they detect that you're doing something which they may feel wrong a couple times. Like the Swipe app, for instance. They use a lot of toast hints.
Personally, not a big fan, of toast. What do you guys think, Marco?
You put me on the spot. I have it. Yeah, I think like for everything, any information that we can avoid to provide and it's just implicit in what you're doing, the better. I can see toast being overused just when the UI is not confident that it's going to do a good job, right? And feels the same with tutorials as well. You do them because you don't know if really people are going to get it. Now, it's kind of philosophical, but obviously, the less you use toasts, the less you use tutorial, the more probably you're going to be putting a lot of emphasis in the UI, in the application, and making all the things clear through hierarchies and through use cases and so forth. So it is a tough call.
Yeah, and another thing is that remember that these first-time tutorials and toasts and stuff, they're actually interruptions, right? It's not something that the user asked for. And chances are, because of that, they might not even pay attention. And so they might see it as an annoyance, quickly dismiss it, move on. And so the goal that you set out, you had really good intentions, but it didn't get accomplished. One thing is that we are working on help best practices or patterns for that. And you know that in the Action Overflow, help is something that we recommend be put there. At the bottom, and as that becomes more and more common, I think users will look for that actively when they need help.
That makes sense. We actually, we do have it over there. If you click on the overflow menu, you have a little help in there. We just figured, you know, first thing they'll do, they'll probably, you know, run into that issue that I was saying, you know, where they don't properly know how to operate the application. And because of that, then we decided, all right, well, let's pop it, and then let's also allow them the option to, anytime they want, they can go back to it through the overflow menu and hit help. But I do agree with you guys, though. You know, although it did reduce a little bit the amount of support that we were getting, or support emails rather, we've also gotten a couple emails about users saying, oh, hey, listen, you know, seems like it's a little too many pages, and we did have some instances. I don't know if you remember where. There's a little checkbox in there we have, and it says don't show again. Check on it, hit continue. Next time they load the app, the help screen won't show up. A lot of people actually didn't see the checkbox, even though it's right there.
That's absolutely true.
They would hit continue, and then next time they would open the app, you know, the splash screen would show up. So yeah, there's definitely some pros and cons in there.
And that was one of the other pieces of advice that I wanted to give. You know, do give people an option to bail out, you know, on the first screen. You know, don't force them to go through
Yeah.
8 pages, but you know, say, okay, I feel like I got this handled, so I'm going to skip the tutorial, especially when you know you have it covered in the overflow menu later on, so you can go back and revisit it.
Maybe we don't show it on default, and they have to access it through the overflow menu. Maybe that's a good way.
And something that I wanted to say is that you guys will be surprised. We do so many user testing around the out-of-the-box experience with an Android device. And you know, we have those screens that shows up once and they tell you, you know, how to add something to the home screen and things like that. So even though you are excited, you just got a new device, you probably are more likely to be reading these things. Still, people don't do it. People just want to get right into the experience. And
I don't do it either,
right.
so.
That's it.
I think we have some questions from the audience.
Yeah. Hey guys, I actually just wanted to share an experience. You know, I'm thinking back to when I was a kid and the first time I came across an equalizer, the bass and the treble buttons on a stereo. It's completely magical where all of a sudden you bump the bass and the whole house shakes and you know everything's affected immediately. You didn't have to explain anything to me, I just had to turn the knob. Later on in life when I saw a graphic equalizer, you have colors, you have like 6, 7, 8 colors and knobs that you can turn up and down immediately. You don't have to tell me what it does, all I have to do is turn a couple down and you can hear it immediately, and that's the great thing about a graphic equalizer. The way I see your app, I think there's probably 2 different types of users. One is going to be an audiophile, a person who wants to get in there and really tweak and make their performance optimal. Another person is just going to be entertained purely with playing with the manipulation of sound. I think maybe that's something you guys can consider.
It seems to me if users are asking for a music player, you should just put a basic music player in there by default. I mean, you know,
that makes sense.
You're going to have beginners and intermediate or audiophiles, and then the audiophiles will find their tools, and then this way there is no, by default, they use your music player, and you've done so much work already on this, I'm sure it wouldn't be trouble to basic.
Stay tuned.
Okay.
Check out our website, something's coming.
Hello. Yeah, first of all, congratulations for the app. I find it super useful. I didn't know it, so I'll get it definitely.
Thank you.
I kind of agree with the blue shirt girl.
Thanks.
You know, this kind of interruptions for the user are kind of annoying, especially the first time you get the app. So, and toast, of course, are really ugly. One solution that we are using for our app for Wunderlist, you can download it, all of us, all of you. It's really smart solution. What we do is we kind of make hints live when you open the app for the first time. So we show the main screen, and we kind of add some graphics around in the corners where more difficult places for users are. So it's kind of, you're not blocking the user, you have all the functionality there, and you show them. You can plan the user at tick pause just not to show them again.
I think I've seen what you're saying, and there's a couple instances where developers will come up with an overlay pop-up that shows up, and then they'll say, all right, click here, and then this will do this and that. All they got to do is click outside anywhere on the screen, and then the pop-up dismisses. So that might be a
smart solution, and you're not like killing, you're not interrupting.
Yeah.
So I think we're out of time, but let's talk a little bit more after the show. A couple of things.
Round of applause. Thank you. So we have 2 more apps to go. The next one is going to be Latify, and I welcome on stage Davey Dewell. Let me just do one thing real quickly. Start, and you are here. History map.
Hello, welcome. I'm Davey. Marco was kind enough to give me his phone because Marco was kind enough to give me his phone because mine obviously has a Wi-Fi cell radio problem here. So the application Latify is basically a way to control how your location and location history is processed by your phone. It's basically a Google Attitude client that allows you to have fine-grained location updates being managed from the application. It also allows you to upload your location to other Google services like Fusion tables, stuff like that. It allows you to share your location, location history. So everything related to location and location history, basically.
So, Davey, I am blown away by the amount of features you have in that. I mean, this thing, as you said in the description in the Google Play Store, this is a feature-rich app. And sometimes with feature-rich apps, we have challenges in terms of how to promote all that it can do without overwhelming the user. So I guess the question I have for you is, of all the things that this can do, what is the most important?
Yeah, so like you said, it's kind of a geeky, techie application. Yeah. So it's kind of derived from a Google Latitude API sample that I did, and it kind of grew to this feature-rich application. So I think the important aspect of this application is that it allows you to really fine-grain the way that your location updates are pushed to Google Latitude and Fusion tables and stuff like that. So you can really define like the interval. Do you want to use GPS, Wi-Fi? What do you want to do if you don't have an internet connection? Should it sync that afterwards? Should it sync it automatically? Stuff like that. So it's the way that your location is pushed to Google, basically.
Okay. With that, I thought we could take a look together at your action bar that you have now. It's a definite improvement from the previous version, I think, in terms of iconography or using some standard ones.
Yeah. Actually, for clarity, what you see here is the current application available on market to the left, and this one is the application that he's currently building.
Yeah. So right away, I can tell, I can share, I can refresh. There are some familiar things here. And then there are a few I wasn't so sure about, but they fit in, visually. I think Peter can speak to it. There are two things that I wanted to talk about with the action bar. One is there a way that we could have fewer, do you think? In terms of importance, are all these equally important? Are there things that...
You mean the action items on the bottom of the...
Yeah, that's right. Those icons.
Yeah.
They're all important.
It's always difficult to kind of remove stuff, but I'm sure that for me they're kind of equally important. But
well, I'll give a suggestion. One thing is that users are accustomed, and I think they'll be more accustomed in the future to going to the overflow menu for help. And the one thing that I think you don't want to do, when you put help front and center like that, it says, it kind of sends a, what do you call it, some liminal message. This thing is difficult to use. So that's one you could easily, and then you're down to 5.
Then we still have 4,
yeah, 4.
And touching on Rachel's point, like a lot of times in visual design, there's just a lot of stuff, and you really want to direct a user's view and focus towards one place, which would be the map and your main actions, and then you could draw those icons even flatter and flatter, but then you can't draw them flatter than how they are right now, right? And then so a lot of time, visual design is about picking and choosing the important things and removing and sticking out other things and stashing them away.
Yeah.
Hey, while you're up here, Peter, I did want to ask you about a particular icon. So the pin, right? So there's a pin icon here.
Yeah.
There's a pin in the middle of the map.
Yeah.
And there's also a pin in the Latify launcher.
Yeah, so I think Gigbeat did a really good job with how they expressed their brand. Was they had a subtle cue of pink, and they had the same shape that kind of permeated through the whole app, right? And then you could also do the same. Like the pin is the hero in this app, and then if you really created whether it be a pin or that Google shape place thing, and then you had that consistent everywhere, it's really recognizable, and you could really showcase that as the hero as your
I have a chat with the designer that I'm probably going to have to hire.
Yeah, and speaking of pin, can you describe for us what this does, this particular?
Yeah, so basically what this pin does is that, as it says in the horrible toast, it allows you to kind of set your location manually without using the Wi-Fi or GPS. So basically allows you to tap around the map and allows you to set a location manually.
So what happens, let's say that I didn't have that manual on and I were to touch somewhere on the map. What would it do?
Then it would just be the standard map behavior.
Panel, what do you think about trying to make the manual setting of location more direct manipulation where you don't have to touch something?
Like a long press or something, or?
I'm not sure what the right answer is, but just, when I think of, like, if this is something that people are going to do a lot, just be able to touch and then maybe blow up and...
Yeah, it really feels like I see all the actions here in the action bar at the bottom, right? And then when I tap on the screen, nothing happens.
Yeah.
And it really feels like you should be able to take some of these primary actions and put them on the pin itself. It's kind of surprises that if I tap on the pin, I don't get any interaction. Yeah. So that's, I think, a message that we want to build. Let's put the actions where they matter. Let's just don't be lazy and be like, OK, there's an action bar for that. We put everything in there. Let's try to think about where they can be in the view, because the more we embed them, the more we map them where they matter, the more people will find them.
OK. Question from the audience.
About the icons on the bottom. I'm a developer too, and I understand all the features that we implement are super important to us. But we can always roll analytics in and see what our users are actually using, and we can use that data to rank the different features that we have there and maybe not include them all, back to your point.
Yeah, that's definitely
so sort them by priority and maybe get rid of some of the ones that aren't used terribly often.
Yeah. That's definitely a good point, yeah.
One thing is be careful about when you use analytics in that way, though, is of course your design is going to bias people towards selecting certain buttons. So there's definitely room for analytics, but I think it also requires a lot of thinking ahead and trying it out yourself.
Yeah. Switching topics, can we go to the screen where you have the profiles? I don't think you got. Yeah, I don't think you were able to describe it. Well, actually, why don't we just stay on here?
Okay. That one.
Well, let's stay here while we're here right now. Another question. This goes back to iconography. I've noticed that when each of these has an icon, and when you navigate there, your app icon changes.
Yeah.
And I wondered about that because I'm accustomed to seeing the app icon persistent through an app. And when I saw the globes, when I first saw the globes, I thought, oh, that's the browser.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about not having icons at all for the other choices there?
Yeah, I think the fact that there are now different icons shown is because each activity has like its own icon, and the action bar was kind of using the spinner control, which kind of loads up all the activities here, and this behavior kind of came out of the box, but can be made differently, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if it would take away all that much if there were no icons at all. And
I mean, also in this in this spinner control. Yeah. I kind of got this from the Google Maps application, which kind of did it that way.
I see. Okay.
It's exactly the same pattern.
Okay. Well, that's something that we might question on the Maps product too.
You have like the places, latitude, also different icons.
Yeah, the older version of the G+ app was similarly guilty of that.
I'm following your pattern, so.
But you're not playing with patterns.
Bless your heart.
So
but I was thinking about kind of replacing this with the kind of slide-in thing from Google Plus now.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that pattern would be a really good match for this context, right? Because they tend to be exclusive modes that you would be in the application, and just kind of bringing in that panel instead of the drop-down, especially if you want to kind of cosmetically add, the icons to add differentiation between the different ones. You wouldn't necessarily even have to carry those individual icons forward from that point, but to just kind of make identification easier is a reasonable way to go, I think.
I think it also allows you to put like more stuff in it, like notification stuff. So
yeah, I mean, for this app, I could imagine you could have a packet which was explaining the current state of what you were broadcasting, like that. In addition to here's the stuff I can navigate to. Here's the current state of what I'm transmitting as far as my location goes to latitude.
Yep.
There's something here, though, that I think should be important to reference, which is preferences and help are not really much. Normally, you use this pattern when you have different applications within an application, so a lot of features. But the preferences and help, so the settings, they normally go under an overflow. This is how people are trained to find it, and especially because if they go under an overflow, they can find it in different screens, and not just in the main screen where you have it. There's just a little detail.
Do we have time for one more question, or were you about to gong?
No. Go ahead, one more.
Why don't we take one more question from the audience?
So looking at the pin, when you press it, well, there's no real sort of context change for the user. I was wondering whether you should do something similar to in the list screens, where the header then sort of changes and it goes a sort of darker blue in ICS. Whether something like that would kind of help the user know what mode they're in.
You mean like if you press on a pin and you change like the action bar? Or?
Well, if you're pressing the pin in the action bar now, yeah, there's no indication that you're...
Yeah.
That'd be a good part.
That can also be, yeah.
Yeah, different icon states. Do we have time for one more topic within Latify? Okay, profiles page. Okay, when I saw this, what jumped out to me immediately, and I also work on it a lot, is settings and the settings pattern. These look like settings to me, although you've called them profiles.
Yeah.
Do you think a lot of people will use them often and change them often, or will they set it and forget it? They will.
Yeah, this is kind of the part which is primarily used because people like put it in driving mode because they want to update their location like every 30 seconds and get a really nice trail of their trip.
And then when they're done,
when
they turn
they're
it
like
off.
at home, they put it like in 10 minutes, 30 minutes to kind of see that, okay, I was at home for like 8 hours or I was at work for 10 hours.
But will they come here a lot to change these choices? Or
usually it's done like once. They basically set it up and then there's either a widget to quickly change profile or there's integration with applications like Tasker, Locale to automatically switch them based on certain conditions.
So I would suggest if it's true that these are not changed a lot, these preferences, that you merge them with settings. You merge them with your preferences and have a settings section in your action overflow because that's reserved for things that aren't used a lot, and that will also help in terms of reducing the number of choices on your main screen. Now, in terms of design of the profiles, definitely take a look at the settings pattern in the design guide. We've got patterns that exist for all of these so that you don't have to use big buttons. In terms of these question marks, it's interesting that help's come up a few times now in this session, which I think is great. So you have help choices for every single setting. And there are, let's see, there's 7 of them. And they're big and they're blue. And I'm wondering, what if they weren't there? Could there be another way that you could provide help?
She's tough.
The girl in blue is subtle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tried to put all this text in like this screen, but it's not possible. So I don't know.
Yeah. Again, like the point I made earlier, when you have a question mark that's given a lot of prominence, it says to somebody, it kind of sends that subliminal message. This is scary. So, and now you have 7 of them.
It is kind of scary because, I mean, there are a lot of settings, and I think it's specific to this type of application because I really want to give like the user this fine-grained control, and with that fine-grained control comes a little bit of additional information that they might need, I think.
So my suggestion would be explore how these labels could be as informative as possible without getting very wordy. I know that can be tough to do. And maybe your dialogues as well.
Yeah, and you don't have to feel constrained necessarily to kind of equal height list items. You could have a 3 or 4 line block of text under each item if it would really be helpful to explain it in this context, and just take the touch away. So to provide the same content, but just make it more immediate.
Or if you think that, all of this explanation, it might be useful to see all together at once, like these choices relate to another, consider having one help choice for the entire screen in the action overflow. Okay. One more question?
One more question, then we get to...
Yeah, another way that you could do the help on that is simply provide, on the label, provide a link to the same help. So that if you tapped on location polling interval on that text, it would bring up that information. And that way you remove a control entirely, and you still got affordance for the same, for the full information. And then if you also added a subtitle or subtext in there, you could provide a little bit of help, and then if somebody touches it, you provide the whole help.
Yeah, I was thinking about something similar. It's a very good insight. And I think it talks about again, this message we're trying to deliver, which is try to have the actions where they matter, rather than creating them outside the view. And with that, thank you very much, Davey.
Yeah, thanks, Davey.
So this is the last application, and I invite you all to stay. Because it's going to be a lot of fun. As soon as we got this application as a volunteer, we were like, oh yeah, we need to do it because it's so much fun, and we played with it. So I'm really happy to have Oren on stage with us presenting Face Blender.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Oren Ben-Gigi. I've been developing for Unreal about 2 years ago. My previous experience was doing image processing, and Face Blender is an app that was set to solve a very important problem of taking two different faces and blending them into one face. So if you want to see how you and your girlfriend children will look like, you can use this app. This is the UI. You can go to the Blend Face UI, and from here you can open up the camera. Maybe we'll do a live demo. Anyone want to? Okay. Just a second. Okay. So we got one face. I'll take another one. Okay. Can you see that? Okay. So you just press a button. You don't have to do anything. And this is the result. And you have tabs. You can see the original faces. And sometimes the face detections go wrong, so you can out of time.
So when Marco asked me to work on Face Blender, I thought I pretty much won the lottery out of all of the people who were here, because everybody else had to work. I got to make goofy pictures. It's awesome. So if you can go to the slides, Marco, go to the
Yep.
So yeah, I pretty much walked around annoying all of my coworkers by forcing them to look into the camera and take pictures with me. So this is me and my wife, and thankfully our children don't actually look like this, so we're safe there. And this is me and our coworker Jeff, who has gone. Go to the next one, please. Me and Richard No, he's somewhere around here. You may have seen him earlier today. Go on to the next one. Now this one is actually me and Sergey, I think. No, this is me and Rachel, actually, taken earlier today. And one more? Yes. Here's me and Sergey with the glasses on and everything. I'm hoping this will get me promoted. I don't know if I'm going to have that luck or not. So obviously, this app is all about fun. And if you take a look at the screen that we're looking at right now, there's some very interesting, subtle cues that tell you that this app is all about fun. First of all, you've got this like cool, bright blend background. You've got that kind of hand-lettered font making it feel like, hey, this is, come play. We're not going to do anything important here. We're going to have fun. And you've got the cool little icon going in the corner there. So everything about the style of this screen, I think, really says, let's have fun. But then you look at the content. And I don't know about you guys, but file manipulation is pretty low on my list of fun things to do. I look at this screen, I look at load and delete and about, and I can understand how those are important actions, things that people might want to be able to do, but they aren't fun. They take a little bit away from where I really want to go. Where I really want to go with this app is to that first button there, that blend faces. I want to just jump right in and start taking some pictures. So we'll talk in a second about maybe some ways we could do that, but let's go on to the next screen. So you hit that blend faces button, and this is what you see. Again, we've got a nice consistent feel, a consistent style. It still keeps that sort of playful feel to it. but there's a lot of things that you can do on the screen. If I look at it, there's just for the one key action that I'm most interested in, which is getting a picture loaded up to start the blending process. I've got 6 buttons. I've got the big, nice affordance of the picture frame, which is where my finger just is magnetically attracted to touch. And then I have the camera button, and I have a Facebook button. These are all different ways of loading up a picture. And I have each one of those for both pictures. I've got 6 different buttons that I have to look at when I'm looking at the screen, which can be a little intimidating, perhaps, and also I just have to think a lot harder than I want to work with a fun application. So I think one of the things that you should think about doing with this application is really trying to get right into taking that first picture. Jumping right into the big picture frame before you show any of your file manipulation stuff.
Okay.
Jump right into here. Show a big picture, maybe show a button that helps you to understand a secondary action. I mean, one of the themes I think that at least we've been saying for most of the apps that we've looked at so far today is that less is more. That the more you can pull out of your UI, the more you can make decisions about what's the most important aspect, better off I think you're going to be. I would look at those 6 actions that you've got there. Maybe eliminate them down to 3 by starting with just one picture and moving the user along to the second picture.
Oh, like a wizard, you go from screen to screen to screen.
Yeah, that's one option. Yeah, you want to draw a little bit, Rich? Rich is going to save you all from seeing my completely illegible scribbling. So, and another option you can think about here is are all 3 of those ways of getting an image equally important? I would argue, you probably have a better idea of how users use this application, but I would argue that using the camera to take a picture, that's what I want to do probably about 80% of the time.
Yeah.
And then, picking something from the gallery, that's kind of fun too, because that's how I got to get Sergey's picture in there. And Facebook, I can see how that could be useful, though, of course, I'm a Google Plus user, so I don't know what this Facebook thing is. But,
so much smarter than me.
Yeah, so, did we switch over? Yes. It's almost as though you read my mind, Rich. Yeah, this is one option that we could do. What Rich is drawing here is we've got a big image in the center you could use for your camera. Tap on that big image in the center and have it switch to the camera view that you had before. And you have the smaller image so you can see the other options that you might have available. Or sorry, what the other picture is if you've already taken a picture or is not, or will soon be when you get there. And then you could have 2 different actions for the Facebook and for the camera. I might even go further and say, pick your secondary action, link it up to that big picture, and put your tertiary action in the overflow menu somewhere, which you don't currently have, but we'll get there. What do you think? I mean, I don't know if anybody has other opinions about this. But.
What about the swap button to swap between faces?
Yeah. I think you can just make it a direct touch.
Yep.
So it's like, this is the face I'm editing now. It's larger, so it has prominence. So I'm going to shoot picture, pick from gallery, or maybe I can just kind of tap directly. If I tap, you can just kind of toggle the position of those.
Oh.
There's kind of the one active one. And maybe like after I take a picture, we automatically toggle it. So it's like, you could even say, face A or face 1, take a picture. They switch positions. The animation cues you a little bit to the state change, and maybe it rotates to be face 2. And then the blend button is your nice big target down at the bottom. I mean, you could also do this as, I kind of like this swap, the swap here, because then you don't have to kind of have different screens. But you could imagine the user could also just go through a progression of screens where screen 1 is face 1, and then that glides over to face 2, and then maybe they don't even hit the blend button. They just swipe over to see the blended version of it. So something like that could work.
Yes. So that's that screen. Now let's go on to the screen that you see once you actually have finished entering in both. So what you're looking at here is, over there, I should say, is you wouldn't see all 3 of these at the same time. These are 3 different tabs displayed in this view. Yeah. And the thing that I think is most interesting to note about this, especially after we've looked at the last 2 screens, is that in the last two screens, we've got this nice colorful background. We've got the hand lettering. Boom. Here, we're into something that feels very frameworky. We've got this gray action bar. We've got the blue tabs. We've got the white background. It almost feels like I'm in a different app, and it loses a lot of the sort of the fun, the playfulness of the previous screens. And you might think, working on Android design, I might cheer for the action bar and the standard framework elements here, but I think actually this is a case where sticking with the integrity of your application, the visual integrity of your application, would be the way to go, to have that nice, seamless throw. So I'm a little bit curious about why you chose to go this direction with this screen.
Well, the idea was to have the ability to see all the different faces you took, including the blended one. And sometimes face detection goes wrong, so you can go and edit blend. And you can just manually adjust the detected face and do it to the other face, like this. And once you hit apply, it's reblend the faces and give you a better result, or worse, I don't know.
I think I've become a V for Vendetta mask. And Ugnaught.
Well, there might be some ways to get the same kinds of actions available to you, even using your own custom background. But one of the things you can do with Action Bar doesn't need to use the framework gray background. You can actually use a transparent background. So you can keep your own background image there, the one that you've had earlier, and draw that there. Likewise, you can change the font for your app title there. You could use the same font that you were using earlier, so you keep that consistency. And I might look at something instead of tabs, which are effective ways of jumping between these three screens. But going back to what Rich was drawing, you might think about doing this with sort of more direct manipulation. I don't know if part of what you were trying to do here was make this screen or this image as big as possible in this view. But you might be able to sacrifice a little bit of space around the edges to kind of hint at the A and the B on either side, or perhaps it's a linear progression. I don't know what the right approach is here, where you can directly manipulate just swapping between the start picture, or the two starting pictures and the blended picture. And if you chose to use the action bar throughout your application, even on the earlier screens that we saw, and maintain that playfulness with the transparency and the font changes on the title, you could put in there your overflow menu, and that gives you a place to put things like load and delete and the actions that perhaps you don't want to give the same kind of prominence to when you're really trying to get someone to just have fun and start taking pictures, but you need to have available to the user there.
I agree. The interface here is too serious, I think. For
this screen, yes.
Yeah. Agree.
You want to show the Skype application? Or?
Sure. What?
The Skype application as an example. Sure. I think this is what Jeremy is talking about. There are applications already that have a transparent action bar. So really, you can keep your application feeling full screen, and you still have that affordance that is really important to have consistent, which is the overflow menu. So there are a lot of ways to play with your application, not to make it feel like, oh, this is an action bar, and this is this element from the framework. You can play with it and making it feel like a full screen experience. And this is a perfect example.
Were there any questions or comments from the audience?
I just wanted to think that potentially the first page in the app, he could completely get rid of it and just bring up the second page, have the action bar with the load, delete, and about, and basically go right there. That's my first idea I would have had.
I think that's a great idea. That's also what I was suggesting.
Yeah. So a comment about the image selection screen. I think your suggestion is a great improvement, but I'm still not 100% sold on it. I was wondering if maybe you made a comment about your eyes drawn towards the images and you just want to touch them. Maybe there's just two buttons with the placeholder images. When you touch one, there's a secondary level of choice. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I'm guilty of not having reviewed the new Android design guidelines. So is there any affordance that would be appropriate to accomplish that?
I'm not sure there's anything that would be a common secondary action level. You certainly could tap into it and have a change in the action bar. Action bar supports that sort of behavior. So your action bar could add icons if you want to. I had thought about that too when I was looking at this app, and I chose not to recommend that primarily because I think that in order to make that work well, you kind of need to be a little bit interruptive. I tap into this big, beautiful picture frame, and then I get asked how I want to get the picture in there. And I think that you can probably make a good primary choice and allow the other ones to kind of fade into the background so that if someone's looking for an alternate choice, they'll see it. But if they're not, they don't have to kind of mentally parse it. That's my theory.
Yeah, I mean, one other, we'll do more questions, but I mean, one other thing to keep in mind is, there are lots of capabilities in Android that might not seem like natural matches for an app like this, but really could be great. And I think Beam, or the NFC, could be one of them. Right? Imagine you've got two users that each have this app installed. They just take their own pictures and then touch to blend, effectively, would be what you'd be doing at that point. Because then both users kind of get that surprise at the same time. And it just kind of shortens the, yep. Question?
Well, I had actually two suggestions. So the first was, this is fun. People have had it for a while. They might have accumulated some images that they've saved. So rather than come up directly into Face Blender, come up with some thumbnails in a gallery and have the Face Blender button right there, significant, prominent, and be able to show some of your most recent or pick favorites as your start screen. So instead of an empty screen that you need to fill with faces to blend, you've got some funny ones that you've already made. The second suggestion was the tabs. Tabs are kind of, I love tabs, really I do, and 3 tabs are what I love. I have a tab widget app, and it doesn't work that well though. You could put like an A on the left and a B on the right, and have the blended face in the middle. Swipe to see face B, swipe to see face A. And maybe have some options to shrink them and have all 3 of them, especially in a tablet view. You could have all 3. But my suggestion would be to put the blended face in the middle and not on the end. That's what occurred to me.
To your first comment, Oren actually has developed, there is a sort of a gallery viewing widget. I just didn't show it in this UI because I thought these things were the most important.
Okay, last question.
I want to ask about the blend button, because the natural place for me to put it would be the action bar, like one of the actions in the action bar just blends. And then I myself found a problem in one of my apps that people don't like it there, so I put 2 buttons. And this is an alternative, so I wanted to know what are your thoughts on this. What are your thoughts on 2 buttons, or button in the action bar, for the main action in the form, like blends?
I would usually put your main action in the form. If you have something where there's stuff going on in the main part of the screen, like we have in Face Blender, and then an action that acts on all that stuff that you just did, makes a lot of sense to embed that in the view instead of putting it up in the action bar. If you have, I'm thinking of like People application, for example. This is something where you're doing a lot of different things when you're editing a contact. And we have the Done button up in the action bar. That because it sort of applies to the entirety of the screen, and not only just the screen that you're viewing right now, but pieces that you may have been looking at, scrolled up, scrolled down. It's less of an immediate response to the content that's immediately above it, instead of it's more of a, at this time I am now finished. So it kind of depends on how you're using it, but what I'm getting a little bit from your description is I would probably put that primary action in the content itself.
I see. Thank you.
And this is the time.
Wait. I got one more picture. Go to the next one. Just to end with a little. This is me and Brad Pitt. I was hoping it would improve me, but I don't think it improved either of us, unfortunately. Thanks a lot.
With that, thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. Most of you have been here for 2 hours. So very much thank you for myself, from our guests, and from our team.